The RTX 3070, is it worth $499 MSRP? Well, to answer that question straight away, an overwhelming yes. That's from me. But let's get over all those numbers first for you guys. And starting off at 1080p, we tested 8 different games here today, those being Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Doom Eternal, Horizon Zero Dawn, Fortnite, and this is the Nightmares update, Tom Clancy's The Division 2, The Outer Worlds, and also MechWarrior 5. Now, what we're going to see here is at 1080p, the numbers really depend on the game you're playing. And I thought when I started testing this card, I would see a trend where perhaps the 3070 performed better at 1080p, and then at 4K the 2080 Ti performed better. But this wasn't the case at all, and vice versa actually, where it actually more depended on the game and which title won at which resolution. Well, we can see here at 1440p, they, just like 1080p, trade blows, and it actually depends on the title. And then stepping things up to 4K, they yet again trade blows. But here's the winning factor for the 3070. Well, actually 2 big winning factors. First of all, that price point, and second of all, ongoing updates, where driver updates will make this card perform even better going forward into the future. The gaming numbers for the price point are quite simply phenomenal. That's, of course, we got to talk about the big elephant in the room, and that is the supply. So whether you can get one of these at day one is going to be another thing, where this time around, I've spoken to so many different people, and it's always the same story. The demand for the RTX 3000 series is like none other that no one's seen in the tech space, period. So if you don't get one of these on day one, rest assured you will get one, you just have to be patient. But what I'm gonna see here is that the power consumption is another big factor for this card, really just landing a big victory over the 2080 Ti, where we show you guys the power consumption numbers here. We can see that it's just beating out the 2080 Ti, but another thing is too, since I've been focusing heavily on undervolting the 3000 series cards, the 3070, just like the 3080 and the 3090, does benefit greatly from a solid undervolt. Now, tuning this at around just over 1800 megahertz, and then actually upping the memory speeds in tandem, saw our power consumption drop roughly around 70 to 80 watts depending on the game and the application being used. But again, that's down from 220 watts direct draw on the card itself. So you can get this card tuned to around roughly 140 watts with the performance you're seeing. Now, coupled with the weight of this card right here, this is the Founders, but I'm also checking out some other cards as well, and a lot of these cards are coming just over 1 kilogram. But coupled with this smaller footprint and the lower power consumption, especially if you undervolt the card, this will be great for people who want to install a high-powered GPU into a mini-itx case, for example. Now, in terms of the cooler design, they're going with, instead of the Founders cards, the 3080 and the 3090, which had a fan on the rear of the card, this has 2 fans on the underside of the card. However, it still has the back of the card being open in that it can blow air through. Now, one critiquing point about the 3070 Founders versus, say, the 3080 Founders and the 3090 Founders is that since it's smaller in length, this actually places this second fan right over your memory. So it's basically, when you're gaming, blowing hot air straight onto your DIMMs or your DDR4 memory. And this is the thing, I don't know over time if this could potentially shorten the lifespan of your DDR4 memory, for example, but my gut says, of course, with experience with PC parts, the hotter something runs over time, the more likely it is to fail. They're going over the rear of the card. This is a standard RTX 3000 output design here, 3 DisplayPort outs and 1 HDMI 2.1. And this is important if you want to get the 120 Hz 4K 10-bit experience, which is very nice. I'm not gonna harp on about it like I've harped on in the past about the 4K OLED, but if you want to play more competitive style games at 4K 120 Hz, this card will definitely do it, as opposed to the 3080 and 3090, which are more suited to upping the settings at 4K. Another key difference between this card and the 3080 and 3090 is the 12-pin power connector included. It only requires 1 single 8-pin versus the bigger cards, which required 2 8-pins to this 12-pin connector. Now, in terms of the cooling performance, this is where the 3070 Founders really did a good job, where you'd want to use the auto out-of-the-box settings, in my opinion, which took the card to 48%, and at these temperatures and also fan speeds, it was whisper quiet. which was actually very impressive. I mean, taking it to 72 degrees, but I did delta adjust the temperatures here for my normalized temperature testing against other cards that I've tested. So if you guys go to another review that I've done on a graphics card, you'll be able to compare the temperatures to that particular card. We can see that upping the fan speeds to 60% did bring down the temperatures, same with 80 and 100%, but I thought out of the box this thing was tuned for maximum noise versus temperature efficiency. But then the added benefit, if you want to undervolt it, which I do highly recommend you do, you'll be tasting even lower temperatures and lower noise, which this cooler is geared up to handle 140 watts, for example, very easily. Then what if you want to go the other way? Say for instance, you don't care about power consumption, you just want the best performance right here, right now, and you want to overclock. Well, here's where this card did actually quite well. Even though the core clock did not go as high as I've seen in the past, where it came just under that of 100 megahertz, the memory overclocks were some of the biggest I've ever seen here in the history of the channel, scoring over a 1000 megahertz boost, which in effective terms is a 2 gigahertz boost, which put this card at a very healthy boost in FPS after we overclocked it. And the added benefit of that was the power consumption didn't actually go up that much. I believe I measured around about another 20 watts maximum on power draw after overclocking the card. Anyhow, all that information out of the way brings us to a conclusion with the RTX 3070, and I'm gonna have to fight over the baby Maggie out here on the balcony singing to me during this review. And that's actually a first for me with the review where a magpie's been singing out on my balcony while I'm trying to do the conclusion. What that means is even a magpie is getting excited about this RTX 3070 right here. And testing this thing, I'm really excited about the value for money it's going to be bringing to the table. And one thing I did is I looked back in history where I saw a lot of these cards, say for instance a GTX 670. That was one of the cards that I remember buying and just really playing that card heavily. And that came in at around $399 USD, I believe. This card at $499, when we look at the years that have passed, 8 years, we can see that this card, inflation adjusted, is bringing so much value to the table, where it's performing slightly better than the previous year's flagship card. It's giving you guys the great thermals, temperature, and power consumption. And although compared to the RTX 2080 Ti, you do get a similar feature set in that you get RTX Broadcast, RTX Studio drivers, and also the ray tracing itself, this card does differ in that it does have the HDMI 2.1 port at the back. You also get a better thermals and lower power consumption and better ongoing support. That coupled with the much lower price floor of this card makes it an extremely good buy. However, there is one disadvantage, and that of course is the 8 gigabytes of VRAM on this card versus the 11 gigabytes of VRAM on the 2080 Ti. And of course, if you compare that to the RTX 3080 and 3090, they have GDDR6X, whereas opposed to this card and also the 2080 Ti, they carry GDDR6. So although everything on this card isn't flagship, the most important question you guys have to ask, I'm guessing, is it a true 70 series card? Does it bring that higher end performance at a much affordable price point? And the answer, as we said in the intro, is an overwhelming yes. So if you want to go get one of these cards, I can definitely recommend this if you're in the market for a GPU. Now, of course, what's AMD got around the corner? They're going to announce that very soon as well. But one thing I can tell you about what I've spoken to the retailers, if you want to get one of these things, just like the 3080, then you better be very quick, because demand for these cards in 2020 with what's going on and everyone staying indoors is through the roof. There's an artificial extra layer of demand that was never there due to the global pandemic. But this card is definitely going to entertain you if you're in the market for something that can perform. Anyhow, guys, with all that out of the way, if you enjoyed today's review, then be sure to hit that like button for us, and also let us know in the comments section below if you have any questions about the RTX 3070. And we do have some partner cards coming up, as well as some cool builds surrounding this card right here. So do stay tuned for the content to come in the next few days. I also apologize for not getting the review out for some of you guys who want to see it straight away. I actually thought the NDA was a day later than it was, so that's my complete bad there. But I'll catch you guys in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.